Arriving in Tehran to push for de-escalation, facing Heiko Maas were multiple entangled crises, all centering on Iran. Economic sanctions, a nuclear deal in disarray, and rising tensions with the US. His welcome by Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. Talks went overtime. Afterwards, Zarif spoke repeatedly of war.
The new tension in our region is a result of the economic war the United States declared against Iran. The only way to decrease tensions in the region is to stop the economic war. One cannot expect an economic war to continue against the Iranian people, and that those waging this war and those supporting it remain safe.
Maas responded, continuing the references to war.
There is war in Syria and in Yemen. Fortunately, not here. And we want to do everything we can to keep it that way. Nevertheless, the tensions here in the region are worrying.
What a contrast to the optimism of 2015, when Iran agreed to limit its nuclear ambitions in a landmark deal. In return, international sanctions on Iran would be lifted. But under President Donald Trump, the U.S. pulled out of the treaty and reimposed sanctions, which have been crippling Iran's economy. The U.S. has also sent warships to the Middle East, part of a pressure campaign that some fear risks escalating into open conflict. Now, asked about rescuing what's left of the deal, Maas had this to offer.
We won't work any miracles, but we'll do everything in our power to prevent failure.
Iran has already said it will resume enriching uranium if sanctions are not eased by July 7th. At that point, the nuclear deal would be all but history.
Well, for more on this story, we're joined by DW's very own Emmanuel Schaz. Thanks for being with us this morning. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, he went to Tehran hoping to salvage the nuclear deal. But did he have really anything to offer the Iranians other than encouraging words?
Well, Germany is seen as the strongest mediator between Iran and its remaining partners in the deal, in the EU partners. And since 2015, Germany had worked very hard, along with France and Britain, for Tehran to get the promised economic benefits out of the deal. And so I would say there's more than goodwill of the remaining partners of that deal, France, Britain, and Germany. It's not just optimism, because it could also lead to further talks without the US towards eventually a new deal, should the current deal not survive the tensions. And also German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas acknowledged that without the US it would be difficult to help Iran economically, but he's still trying.
Well, Iran's foreign minister in that press conference, he warned that those waging economic war against his country could not expect to, quote, remain safe. What do you make of that statement?
Well, it's not a veiled threat, as we could say. The US has deployed its military in the Middle East to increase the pressure on Tehran, and Tehran has responded by saying that, well, if that's the road that the US want to take, well, they're ready for it. So that goes on to show that Iran is very clear about what he wants: no economic sanctions, no pressure, no military pressure. But the threat is there, and that could actually make the conflict escalate quite quickly throughout the Middle East and bring up an armed confrontation that none of the European partners of Iran want to see.
Okay, nobody, well, particularly the Europeans perhaps, but others in the region as well, nobody really wants that, to see a war there. But if the EU can't counterbalance the impact of the sanctions from the US on Iran, why is Iran even talking to the EU?
Well, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas was adamant that he really wanted to de-escalate the tensions in the Persian Gulf. But for Iran, it is important to keep the talks going because of the economic interests it has with the European Union, and because it showed goodwill ever since 2015, before Donald Trump pulled out of the agreement. Iran had complied with the prerequisites for the economic sanctions to be lifted, at least according to the UN Observatory monitoring its nuclear activities. So it just wants to ensure that it will have its economic interests defended.
Emmanuel, thank you so much. DW political correspondent Emmanuel Schaz.
Thank you.